I'm happy to welcome Jean on stage. She is a trailblazer for many in the industry. She's always focused on growth and positive opportunities. Her career spans 30 plus years in leading IT organizations and managing architecture. She's a member of the Women in Architecture Association. She served as the president of FIPO, Federation of Enterprise Architecture Professional Organizations. She sat on the board, like actually together with me, but from Penn State's Center for Enterprise Architecture in the state, Pennsylvania. She sat on the board of IEEE, and she's now with Lean 42, which is amazing. She's also monthly live with us on the LinkedIn Live, so check out our LinkedIn Lives to learn more about Jean. You can also look her up on the recently featured architecture governance article that had an interview with her, and please welcome Jean.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, and thank you for staying awake. I'm not, so I appreciate the fact that you are. Anyway, so we're going to talk very briefly, because I have 32 slides in 30 minutes, and I have not had enough coffee, so I'll try to make it as fast as possible. But we're going to talk about maturing your EA organization today. For those of you that have stood up an EA organization, or you're rebooting one, please stand up. One, two, three. You're doing it. I know that. You need to stand up. Okay, thank you very much. So whether you're starting out enterprise architecture organization from scratch, or you're rebooting one, or you're going through some metamorphosis, that's pretty much what I've done for the last 30 years. And thank God they fail, because I would be unemployed. So what I did was, I have been asked many, many times, okay, what's the best practice? How do you do this? How do you do that? What's failed? So you're going to hit, most of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is like 7 steps, 7 critical steps that you take, and you guys probably already know most of these, but they're the 7 steps of actually standing up or rebooting an EA organization. And I know that I simplify them a lot and for purposes of the presentation, but there really are only 7 steps, because as we go through this, I will show you. Just forward. There we go. Okay, so there's been some great discussions here today. I was really impressed. I spoke here last year, and this year, I mean, it was impressive last year. Sorry to say that, but this year I thought it was really good. Plus, we had a very diverse crowd. And one of the things that came out of everything I'm going to say today has probably already been said, but one of the things I wanted to stress is the fact that for maturing capabilities, it just can't be overstated. Because if you ever get the opportunity to walk into a company and you're the chief architect, or you're VP of EA, you walk in and you actually have it all put together, it's like, oh my God, it's like eating a handful of gummies. You're just so happy all the time. But that never really happens. But the idea is that having a mature EA organization is iterative. It's constantly iterative. It goes over and over and over because everything changes. And the whole idea is that the more you mature, the more your organization or your market changes, and the more that you have to change. So the things, in my opinion, based on my experience in this industry, the things that will stop you or that impact you or undermine you are compressed business and technology cycles, increase in volume of small projects. I'm sure none of these ever have happened to you guys, but if they have, then you know that you are running up against a brick wall. The biggest question I get is it time to reboot my EA organization? Well, if you look at some of the statistics that are out there, Well, 28% of the EA organizations, and I'm speaking for the US because as you can tell from my accent, I am not German. But 28% of the, I'd say the EA organizations, and this can be from a Fortune 500 to a 50 to a small, have disbanded their EA. And I did a pretty thorough study around this in 2020. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like they disbanded it. Well, part of them would disbanded it because of the fact that they didn't show value. They didn't communicate the value. And they were just literally either centralized and that didn't work, or they tried to federate and that didn't work. For various reasons, they just disbanded and decided to restructure at a later date. 13% of them realized we need to reboot. These are the guys that I like because they're in that 13%. They're like, you know what? We know that EA is of value. We read all the books. We go to all the conferences. But we're doing something wrong. What are we doing wrong? And oftentimes, it's only, of these 7 steps, it may be 1 or 2. So that's the whole premise behind the 7 steps. And then 59% of those had to make incremental changes. Those I don't like to play with because they already know what they're doing, and I'm not going to see any real big outfit on that. So of the 7 steps, this is it. There's build the case, plan the launch, establish, business interface, portfolio process, governance, and strategy. They all sound simple. They're all extremely hard. So in the past, I did the research that I had talked about, and one of the things I walked around and talked to, especially in my network in the U.S., I asked, okay, so why did you start when you rebranded or rebooted? What were the one thing that you had to do? It was get experienced consultants in, which was great for me because I need to buy a house and several cars. But the idea being that you have to have experience. You need people that have already done this. I mean, would you go to a dentist that his first year out of school, he's never had a person in his chair? No. But companies expect, oh, we want an EA organization. So, Joe, Bob, and Deb over there, go stand it up, right? No experience. Of course it's going to fail. So 76% of the companies that have rebooted their EA and they are now successful did it with an experienced person or 1 or 2 people to help. The other part, which I thought was interesting, was organizational readiness, because 45% of those guys said, you know what, all of a sudden EA took off and we're popular now, we're in demand. Well, that is due to, quite truthfully, it's due to the industry analysts and the vendors in this room. So the EAM tool vendors have helped give EA visibility in the marketplace to say, you know what, if you're doing digital transformation, you're going to need to see your whole IT landscape, or et cetera. I mean, they're the ones that are bringing out the statistics. They're doing the research. They're making it visible and transparent so that people, the average CIO or CTO or director in IT, they're like, oh yeah, now I know what EA is, or I'm starting to understand that you have to have it. So I think the organizational readiness is prime. This is a prime time for it. The other area was change in drivers. Over the last 3 to 4 years, if you look 4 years ago, the drivers in EA were completely different. Now there's 9 of them, but I only had room for 4. Cybersecurity, risk and compliance, app portfolio optimization, and cloud transformation. So I think 5 years ago, you probably would have maybe seen 1 or 2 of those up there, but not all. And they're, overall in the marketplace. The other part is the operational model and team. So when people, a couple years ago, I was giving a conference on value proposition of enterprise architecture. And somebody asked me, well, what's the value proposition? I said, your value proposition is your damn team. It's your organization, it's the way that you have things structured, it's your service catalog, and it's your people. That's your value proposition. So I think the industry is now starting to realize that that is really what the value proposition is out of EA. And the other thing is, you can't do this stuff fast. It takes time, and it depends. If you're in the US government, you'll probably never get it done. If you're in a corporation, you could get some of it done, depending. But it takes time, and it almost always takes 6 to 12 months to go through at least one or two of the steps. So the roadmap to maturity is basically the same roadmap as when you're rolling out EA. So I always walk in the door with this because, first of all, if I have a lot of colors, they think I know what I'm doing, and I could be for marketing or sales. But the idea is that when I talk to clients, I go through and say, okay, let's talk about 7 of these, and you tell me what are the areas that you've got going that's good, what are the ones you don't. And then you build the roadmap from that. And then one of the things I wanted to share with you is there is a program that we have at Lean 42 that is kind of a quick guide. So you can go, actually you can go here, use this, and based on those 7 steps, you can go through and answer questions in this Excel product, and it will come back and give you a score. So it tells you, okay, is 1, 2, 3, or 4, which are the areas I'm low in, or which are am I high in? And basically that's what I do. So I just walk in, ask them the questions, fill this out, and come back and say, here's your report. But you can do that based on today. I think we're going to make this available till July 30th. So, okay, so let's talk about build your case. There is, and why this is important. And we talked a lot about communication today. And one of the things that I think is really important is communication for EA, and why you have to build or rebuild your case. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on is up here in this right-hand corner. That's where you want to get. So you may start your EA organization down here, bottom up, as they used to say, or it could be top down, but it typically needs to get up there. And so for me, building your case around business outcomes is the way to go, and probably has been for several years. But now I think it's just an expected way to go. The key steps are basically charter development, stakeholder engagement management, and value demonstration. Again, value demonstration, it's the operating model in your people. And I don't think we focus enough on that in companies, because I'll walk in and I'll meet the EA team and I'm like, wow, these guys are really smart. What are you doing in the closet? And, you know, they'll realize, oh, well, we could be out of the closet? And I was like, yeah. So the whole idea is get your service model, get your organizational mapped out in your roles and responsibilities and stuff in your people, because that's your whole case. It's like a use case, right? You're building a case for it. Next plan is plan and launch. Most of the companies I've gone in where I was actually the VP or the chief architect, this was an area I spent a significant amount of time on, because it was understanding who the stakeholders are, what are the problems, what is it we really want to do, because you had stakeholders that had certain needs, you had the CIO and the CTO that had their own needs. So the whole idea is make sure that you have a transition plan that represents reality, what you are going to be able to do and what you can't do, or won't be able to do for a bit of time. The key steps there are, launch it, communicate your offerings, and put in performance metrics. Performance metrics around E are touchy areas. I always say go high and then go low. So go in high with some reality-based metrics that okay, I can reduce the application portfolio by 10% or 20%, or I can accelerate projects XYZ. Get things that are kind of reality based, but then start planning your performance metrics for the future, right? Because you want to get ahead, you want to get out of the tactical and move towards the strategic as well. Identify, develop your architecture team. I think that's, a no-brainer. One of the areas that I find is really hard is when you go into an EA organization, you have business architecture, you have data architecture, nobody has their roles defined. So if I'm a stakeholder, I'm like, okay, how do I engage with EA, right? Oh, I can go to their website and put in a left, or I can stop the guy in the hall. But the whole idea is you have to have really defined roles and responsibilities because people want to know what's their job. They want to be able to communicate that. And if you're a stakeholder, you want to be able to know who to go to and what to expect from that person. The areas there for key steps were organizational development model. Make sure that, again, you understand what your requirements are, what the structure is, the roles, the responsibilities, and also when it comes to hiring. So she's holding a 3 up. Does that mean 30 minutes or what? 3 minutes. Okay. Well, we're going to have a real short vision here. So one of the things I was going to ask you guys is, you guys hire architects all the time. What's the first or second question you ask them when you're interviewing an architect? Well, I'm going to go apply for you guys because you don't have any questions. So I usually do a couple. I'll throw a couple voters in there. Say, okay, what's your favorite color? And then they'll look at me and think, oh, she's an old lady. She's not going to ask anything important. And then I'll come back and say, what is the last system you architected? That usually will set the tone for a discussion. The reason I always push people to really get realistic when you are hiring an architect, and they're hard to find, we all know that, is make sure that that person you're bringing in understands what your needs. They could be the most capable architect in the automotive industry, but you're in banking and you need them to think and look at the way we do banking and understand when I do a reference architecture, it's around banking and it's not around another industry. So hiring skills and the development of enterprise architects, I think, is critical, especially for the establishing your team. And you do need to have a career path, by the way, for architects. Otherwise, why stay and be an architect, right? Because it's such a lovely job and everybody loves this, right? So fourth step, business interface. This is very important because in my opinion, if you don't have business architecture in EA, you need to get it, or you need to be able to align with it pretty closely. You need to be able to engage with the business so that you can translate that over. Because EA, in my opinion, 90% of what we do is translation. And capability roadmaps. I love business capability roadmaps. I carry them around on my phone. So when I'm on the train or something like that, and people say, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I do this." And they're like, "What's that?" Business capability roadmap, and let me talk to you for about 5 hours. But I think that we heard it today. Business capabilities are they're here. They're here to stay, and we need to integrate them, and we need to use them, and they're going to drive strategy, and then EA can take that strategy and put that in place. So some of the key insights there, key steps is, identify your business priority, do your model, do your roadmap, and understand that your governance, although Thomas touched on it beautifully, for enterprise architecture governance is an enabler, and it needs to be capability-led. Push those technical standards down to your little domain architects who can run around and do all that, but you want to focus up on the governance area at a capability level. So I'm at step 5. Do I have permission to go over? Yeah. Okay, I'll go fast. All right, portfolio process. Okay, technology road mapping. So one of the things that I've found throughout my career is that architects love to create roadmaps and diagrams, and it's cool, right? It's fun because we can see this. However, most of the stakeholders that I've ever worked with don't know what a roadmap is, or they don't understand the value of them. So I always pick 4 roadmaps. These are the 4. And I use these to educate the customer. One of my customers used to carry on an iPad roadmaps. He had 4 roadmaps. They were all accurate. And he would carry that around. So if he ever met somebody in the hall and they said, oh, what are you doing? He was, oh, I was just going over your roadmap. And first of all, it helped engage with the stakeholder. And secondly, it was an educational tool to get the business on board, because I think that they can understand a roadmap versus, you know, a diagram for a reference architecture. Portfolio process, again, technology mapping and portfolio rationalization would be the 2 areas to focus on. Step 6, I'm not going to cover this because Thomas did a wonderful job, and I want to talk to him at some point about that. But governance, in my opinion, you're an enabler. And there are 3 phases of EA governance. When I started out, there was only traditional. Then I thought I got modern and went to intermediate. But over the last 5 to 6 years, I've really pushed into the progressive area, which really focuses EA as an enabler, not so much a policeman anymore. 6 was federate to proliferate. That actually was part of the EA governance part. And these were the key steps: standards and reference architecture. So one of the things that you can do with governance now is, if you've got an EA team, you could do project architecture governance tools where as a project comes through, they fill out a tool that you can either do in Excel or SharePoint, and hopefully we're going to build some in LeanIX and a few other tools. But we do this with customers because what it does, it enables the governance to get pushed way up front in that life cycle, and they can understand, oh gosh, you know, I've got projects here that are at risk, or I've got compliance issues, or you're actually looking at the project architecture early on. And then that is a tool that helps you to wean away some of the chaff of projects so that your governance can then just focus on what's really, really important. The other thing is reference architecture. Again, push those reference architectures down to their owners and make sure that they're responsible and that they have to understand that as projects come in and solutions are developed, that they're using the reference architecture as, in my opinion, a governance tool within them. And what that does is it frees up the architecture board to be more strategic and really focus scope, minimize a lot of their activity, but really focus on what the real governance is at an enterprise level. 7th and last is to develop an IT strategy. One of the things that I have found that is so funny is that I was talking to Dr. Cameron at University of Pennsylvania about 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about IT strategy and why it sucks. And it sucks because IT strategy is usually done in a black box, right? One of the statistics that came out was that only 28% of middle management in a company knows what this IT strategy is. Would you guys agree? Disagree? Do you guys all know what your strategy is? Your IT strategy? We got a winner. Okay, well, if only 28% know what your IT strategy is, that means 72% of us are walking around without a clue, right? We're doing our jobs, we're working hard, but we may not be working on the right thing at the right time. So to me, it's really imperative that an IT organization pulls in EA and they use EA strategically to help them figure out, you got a 360-degree view I need to be able to traverse the IT landscape. I need to be able to understand what is the foundation so that I can create a strategy that's going to work and support the business and or partner with the business. So to me, one of the questions I always ask when I go into a company is, so how involved is your enterprise architecture organization involved with your IT strategy development? Or how much is it with a business? And almost 60 to 70% say they're not. They're not even involved in our IT strategy. So that's usually my cue to say, okay, I could probably get a new car out of this engagement, or I'm going to take a vacation. So anyway, there are some real basic components of an IT strategy. I'm sure you guys all know them. But the idea is to make sure EA is part of that strategy and driving it, if nothing else, foundationally with the data. The other thing is synchronize your planning cycles. Most companies that you go into, your SDLC, your PMLC, and your enterprise, your EALC, are out of sync. And your planning cycles for your strategies are out of sync. So and that's huge, by the way, to try to get all of those in line. But the idea is that EA and IT are often underrepresented in the planning cycles in companies. And so it's really important, not only for IT to get its act together for its cycles, but also for IT to get aligned with the business in their planning cycles. One of the great little artifacts that have floated around over the last couple of years is IT strategy on one page. And the reason that companies are doing this, and this was another quick survey I did a couple years ago, was that if I can put this on one page, I can talk to it, right? And if I can talk to it, then I can talk to anybody. Doesn't matter their title or level, etc. But I highly recommend that you do have an IT strategy, and if you do have that, you make sure EA is part of it, and you stick it on one page so that you can carry it around and refer to it as often as you can. So key steps: IT strategy definition, IT alignment with your business goals, and of course, strategy execution. Sorry for the rush, but that's it. Any questions?
Awesome. Lot of content.
Yeah, sorry.